All right, stand by, everybody. I'm trying to see what is wrong with. Okay, how's everybody doing? We're on break right now. We should be back in a minute here. I guess we're on YouTube. Broadcasting with commercial break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes here. I'm trying to get this going on Facebook. I'm not sure why this is not broadcasting on Facebook. So this is the African History Network show. It's Sunday, April 12th, 2020. Stand by, everybody, while I try to work through these technical difficulties. We're on break right now. We'll be back in a couple minutes from the break. How's everybody doing? This should be broadcasting on Facebook Live, but it's not broadcasting on Facebook for some reason. All right. Stand by, everybody. Let's flip back over here. Okay, so those on YouTube, how's everybody doing tonight? I was trying to get it up on Facebook, and having problems broadcasting on Facebook. But we're here on YouTube, so you can watch me on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep, on YouTube. So welcome back to the African History Network show. It is Sunday, April 12th. What'd you say? Okay, all right, stand by. We'll go to the phone lines just a minute. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. It is Sunday, April 12th, 2020, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. We are in our second hour. So much to cover. You got to watch me during the week on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep, and my Facebook fan page, the African History Network, where I broadcast there throughout the week so I can get deeper into this information. So right before the break, we were doing, I was doing an update on some information dealing with coronavirus and the spread throughout the U.S. I was talking about this extensive article dealing with the impact it's having on African-American owned businesses and how African-American owned businesses are having problems, many of them having problems tapping into the $349 billion that is part of that's set aside for small businesses. That's part of the stimulus bill. Okay, and there's an extensive article from the New York Times that talks about this. Okay, I'm going to go back to that. We'll go to the phone lines in just a minute here. I want to go back to that for a minute. And I was doing an update on what's been going on with the coronavirus as well. Okay. Um, so I was talking about Yasmin Young. Yasmin Young is the owner of Diaspora Salon in Baltimore, Maryland, and she was discussed in this extensive article from the New York Times. Yasmin Young is among the thousands of small business owners at risk of being shut out of the government effort known as the Paycheck Protection Program, because of limits set by lenders grappling with overwhelming demand. Okay. Now, these loans, which do not have to be repaid if the money is used for payroll, rent, or mortgage expenses, could be a lifeline for struggling businesses, especially struggling African-American owned businesses. But that's if they can get the money. Okay. And for small business owners like Yasmin Young, who is African-American, the hurdles could be much higher. That's because minority owned businesses, especially African-American owned businesses, often have weaker banking relationships than their white counterparts. One legacy of the practice of redlining or refusing to lend to people in communities of color. And we know redlining was a government, redlining was created by the federal government. That comes from the Homeowners Loan Corporation that was created in 1933. And redlining basically was created right around 1934. Blackpast.org has a big article dealing with redlining, blackpast.org, right around 1934, 37. So you have redlining being institutionalized. And redlining refers to a discriminatory pattern of disinvestment and obstructive lending practices that act as an impediment to home ownership among African Americans and other people of color. Banks use the concept to deny loans to homeowners and would-be homeowners who lived in these neighborhoods. This in turn resulted in neighborhood economic decline and the withholding of services or their provision at an exceptionally higher cost. The origin of the term redlining stems from the policies developed by the Homeowners Loan Corporation, the HOLC, created in 1933 by the Franklin Roosevelt administration to reduce home foreclosures due to the Great Depression, and then institutionalized by the 1937 U.S. Housing Act, which established the Federal Housing Association, the FHA, the Federal Housing Association. Federal housing agencies, including the Homeowners Loan Corporation and the Federal Housing Association, determined whether areas were deemed unfit for investment by banks, insurance companies, savings and loan associations, and other financial services companies. The areas were physically demarcated or marked with red shading on a map. In contrast, zones which were to receive preferential lending status were marked in green shading and intermediate areas in blue shading. Oftentimes, these decisions were arbitrarily based on the area's racial composition rather than income levels. While the practice was almost universal before the 1968 Civil Rights Act that passed, which is the Fair Housing Act of 1968. That year, that the Fair Housing Act theoretically outlawed redlining. Now, it took about 20 years for the federal government to actually have the teeth to really enforce the Fair Housing Act of 1968. Nonetheless, its impact was felt long after that date. In a series of Pulitzer Prize winning articles which appeared in 1988 under the title The Color of Money, Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporter Bill Dedman, Dedmen, described how Atlanta, Georgia banks still discriminated by the racial designation of neighborhoods. His article illustrated how these banks were nearly twice as likely to lend to homeowners and prospective home buyers in low-income white neighborhoods as in affluent African-American neighborhoods. As a consequence of redlining, neighborhoods that local banks deemed unfit for investment were left underdeveloped or in disrepair. Attempts to improve these neighborhoods with even relatively small scale business ventures were commonly obstructed by financial institutions that continued to label the underwriting as too risky or simply rejected them outright. Check out the rest of this article here for this really good historical piece from blackpast.org, P-A-S-T, blackpast.org, entitled Redlining, 1937. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to John, line 1. Welcome to the African History Network show. John, tell us where you're calling from. East side of Detroit. Okay, go ahead.
I want to thank you for breaking it down and educating the people about what happened with the redlining. And I'm thinking he will probably just look it up this over just another time. So also, that's the great tax dollars too. Remember that.
You said that's the what? Right. Right. Those are our tax dollars. Those are our tax dollars that are helping to pay for this $2.2 trillion bill. Okay. Those are our tax dollars also. Yes. Go ahead.
That's right. That's right. And so I just want to could you speak on California being governor of California? Because you're doing something right now, okay? And I just wanted to say, I think, okay, we got to find another way to get some organized money into this black neighborhood, okay? It's just that simple. I know we got to do something, so we must find a way to get some money in this black neighborhood, and we have to set up some type of what you call one of those investment zones and so forth.
Where investment zones, like opportunity zones. Yeah. Opportunity zones comes from, or not, or we go to back to the empowerment zones during the Clinton administration. We had empowerment zones right here in Detroit, and the empowerment zones helped to really increase the number of businesses, the number of African-American owned businesses, because I knew African-Americans that had businesses in empowerment zones here in Detroit. But John, you mentioned the governor of California. That's Governor Gavin Newsom of California. Now, what was it you want me to talk about regarding California?
Well, I just wanted to ask you, what is the circumstances that you see that he's doing something right in this governor more better than governor we got Miss Whitman. But I just want to know what you think about the way he's running California right now.
The way he's running California? Well, I know Governor in California, I know they have, if I remember correctly, in California, they have a stay-in order in California. The governor of San Francisco, who's an African-American female, she had a stay-in order before the governor instituted it statewide. He's been trying to get things like ventilators and resources from the Trump administration. From my understanding, he's been largely successful in getting so far what he needs from the Trump administration as far as ventilators. Now, I'm not sure as far as personal protection equipment for hospitals. We know that the state of New York, they are further ahead on the curve, in the situation. The state of New York is more acute and more tragic at this point than California. But you know, so far from California, I've been hearing some good things from what Governor Gavin Newsom is doing so far in California. But they can only do the governors had to take the lead on this because of the ineptitude of the Trump administration. Because the Trump administration dropped the ball, because Trump was downplaying the severity of this, because he was on Fox News calling this corona flu and basically equating it to the flu, the governors had to take the lead on this, and the governors have to rely on the federal government for personal protection equipment, for ventilators, for things like this. Okay. So once again, this is an example of how elections have consequences. And this is why you have to have competent leadership, especially when you're dealing with a crisis, when you're dealing with a public health crisis, when you're dealing with a pandemic. Okay. This is why you have to have competent leadership, because the federal government has resources that the individual states don't have. Okay.
That's right. Okay, I'm thank you for you were speaking about the governor of New York. I think the broken positions is nice for them to put that when okay, I'm the governor of New York run for president.
Governor Andrew Cuomo stated this weekend in his daily press conference that he is not running for president. He's not running for vice president, period. In full stop. He's governor of New York. He's going to stay governor of New York. He served in the Clinton administration. He was the former secretary, if I remember correctly, former secretary of HUD. He has no aspirations of going back to the White House or anything like that. He's the governor of New York. He's going to stay the governor of New York. So people can just dismiss those hopes and aspirations of him being added to the ticket as vice president. And nobody's going to run for president right now. It's too late to run for president. Joe, we saw that with this past week. We saw Bernie Sanders dropped out of the race because the handwriting was on the wall. Bernie Sanders' campaign was effectively over after Super Tuesday when Joe Biden won 10 states out of 14. It's pretty much over after that. The death knell was when Joe Biden won the state of Michigan. Okay. And it was just, it was over. So Bernie Sanders conceded this past week. He suspended his campaign. Joe Biden is going to get the nomination, as I've said before, and Donald Trump is scared to death because the one candidate out of 25 or 26 that Donald Trump feared the most and risked his presidency to try to stop, risked impeachment with his July 25th, 2019 call trying to shake down Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky to launch an investigation into the Bidens. The one candidate that Trump feared the most is who he's going to fight. And he knows he knows that Biden will beat him. This is why Trump risked his presidency and risked impeachment trying to stop Joe Biden. Okay. All right, John. Okay, keep listening. All right. And then let me know if we have any more callers, JT. Calling numbers, area code 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600. It's the calling number if you have a question or comment. Back on, I think it was either April. Who's on the other line? Hold on. Say that again. Theo. Okay, we'll go to Theo just a minute. Hold the line. It's Theo Broughton from Hood Research. Hold the line. I did a broadcast. I think it was March 10th. March 10th was, or I remember correctly, is when we voted here in the state of Michigan. I did a broadcast right after I voted, and I talked about how I went to vote and something very strange happened. There was an Asian American behind me voting. And I know for some reason people are under this misconception that Asians don't vote. I don't know who told you that. That's a lie. That's not true. They do vote. Their history is different than ours. They didn't go through 246 years of slavery, decades of Jim Crow segregation. They didn't need a 13th Amendment of 1865 or 14th Amendment of 1868. They didn't need a 15th Amendment of 1870, but Asians do vote. And as their U.S. population has gone from 4% to 5%, and their voter turnout has gone from 3.5% to 5%. If you go to NBCnews.com and look at their Asian American platform, because I read those articles at their Asian American platform, they talk about Asian Americans voting and their issues and how candidates are reaching out to the Asian American community and paying more attention to the Asian American community. But when you talk about Asian Americans, you're talking about people who largely come from at least 20 different countries, not just China and Japan, but India, Sri Lanka, Thailand. They come from Vietnam, Cambodia, South Korea. You're talking about people who have speak different languages, have different cultures, have different histories. And you're trying to compare them to a more homogenous group of African Americans who have more of a common history and speak one common language, have more of a common history. I mean, in 1910, well, actually, we go back to 1900. The Great Migration starts in right about 1915. 1900, 90% of African Americans live in the South because we had a common history that comes from a legacy of slavery. So when you try to compare the Asian American community, and they're coming from largely 20 different countries, speak different languages, have different cultures, have different histories, many of them coming from countries where they could not vote because they're coming from dictatorships. That's a misunderstanding of history. It's totally inaccurate to try to compare that group to a more homogenous group of African Americans. I don't know where people get this nonsense from. But if you go back and watch that broadcast that I did, it's on my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, I went through methodically and deconstructed that argument and provided you evidence as well. And then there was a big story that Tremaine Lee of NBC News did dealing with Asian Americans and voting. So I don't know where people get this nonsense from, but you should really stop repeating it and do more research. We're coming up on a break. How much time we have before the break, JT? JT, how much time we have before the break? Okay, we're on break right now. Okay, that's Joan London. Okay, so when we come back from the break, we'll go to Theo. Hold the line, Theo. Calling number is 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. How's everybody doing? We're on break right now. We got Greg, Holly. How's everybody doing? Okay, so let me see. Some reason it's not broadcasting on YouTube. Just a second here. All right, stand by, everybody. We'll be back in a couple of minutes from break. And then the first hour I recorded, but it wasn't broadcasting on YouTube. So I'll go back and put all of this on YouTube. We'll have this up Monday, okay? The full show. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Feature Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, April 12th, 2020. We are live. Hope everybody's doing well. We're broadcasting on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP, on YouTube, and also our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, on Facebook. If you want to support the African History Network, you like this type of information, you can donate $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, or paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show through PayPal. Then also at my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All of my DVD lectures are available at our website, also AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And then we have our latest bundle pack is the Black Migration 1619 to 2019 bundle pack. And it includes my presentation, 6 Principles of Political Self-Defense, Understanding How Laws and Policies impact the economic conditions of African Americans, 6 principles of political self-defense, understanding how laws and policies impact the economic conditions of African Americans. Let's go back to the phone lines. Let's go to Theo Broughton on, I'm not sure which line she's on. Theo, welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from. We have Theo on the line. Okay, Theo, go ahead. Okay, Theo, go ahead. You're on the air.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Happy Easter to you. I am calling because, one, I appreciate your program very much, and two,
Thank you.
Because of the kind of things that have been going on with this the virus and the conversation and the it's taking front row seat over everything. But here, our local elections are important as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that with some of the positions, you can pay a fee and be on the ballot. Other positions, you have to get petition signatures. And with the 6-foot distance and quarantine, et cetera, and the deadline being the 21st of April, I don't see that as being a possibility. People have been calling the Secretary of State and the governor and writing emails and letters asking to convert the other petition signature requirements into a fee, even if it's just for this political season right now. And I'm glad you brought up that point about the president wanting to shut down the post office.
Right.
It seems like everything he puts on now that he can't have his rallies is a reality show.
Yes. Yep.
And, so we have to be mindful of the kinds of tricks that are being played on the community and make sure that we stay focused on what's beneficial for us. Because in that case, what have we got to lose? Would you say everything?
Everything, yes.
And the positions for the judge happen to be one that needs petition signatures.
For federal judge or state judge, which position?
No,
State. Okay.
There's congressional seat now. Our congressional seat is just for ballot and voting, I should say. But state judge and third circuit judges, I believe is quite a number of them. And there's not been any vetting of anybody. I don't even know who to vote for. And the primary will be in August.
Right.
So that's a decision that the governor and the Secretary of State are going to have to make and speak on.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Theo. Okay. Keep listening. All right. So let's go back to this. I want to go back to the article from New York Times because this ties right into African-American owned businesses. And the caller, John, talked about we have to find other ways to get capital for businesses. And that's true. That ties into the SUSU system that's practiced among West African communities. That ties into the co-ops. We have a whole history of cooperative economics. This goes into tapping into our history. I encourage people to read the book Collective Courage by Dr. Jessica Gordon Nimhard. Collective Courage by Dr. Jessica Gordon Nimhard, a history of African-American cooperative economic thought and practice. And this deals with various co-ops that we've had throughout our history, even going back during slavery, whether we talk about the Free African Society of about 1787, whether we talk about the Colored Farmers Union starts in about 1886 in Texas, grows to about 1.2 million members. When we talk about the Colored Merchants Association around 1927, 1928, which comes out of the Negro Business League, the National Negro Business League, which was founded by Booker T. Washington. But even when we deal with Detroit's own Berry Gordy, Berry Gordy starts Motown Records in 1959, and we've heard the story that he borrowed money from his family, but it came from his family's co-op. His family had a cooperative. He borrows $800 from his family's cooperative to start Motown Records. And the whole concept of the co-ops and cooperative economics, these are African principles that we brought to the U.S. So when you hear me do my lectures, see me do my lectures, and I deal with the pyramid principle. And the foundation of a pyramid is African history and culture. It's our history and culture that gives us our values, our interests, and our principles. Our values, our interests, and our principles. This influences the two sides of the pyramid, economic empowerment and political empowerment. The history and culture, which gives us our values, our interests, and our principles, gives us a cultural paradigm that we see reality through, and it impacts the way that we engage in economics. Do we just engage based upon European capitalism, or do we use traditional cultural practices to engage in economics? Because various ethnic groups and cultures use cultural practices to engage in economics. Well, we have a deep, rich history in cooperatives, but many of us don't understand that history. And largely what happened was a lot of African Americans went to white business schools or went to business schools at HBCUs, and they may have been dealing with white business principles, and they learned white business principles and brought this back to the African American community to try to implement white business principles in the African American community. Now, you can learn things about accounting and marketing and things like this, but largely the history of African American cooperatives, which ties back into African principles coming from Africa, largely that was not taught in the white business schools or even many times at the HBCUs. I'm not against business school because I went to business school. But what I'm saying is that you have to have another education to augment the business education, the business school education. Many people don't have that. So they operate based upon white business principles and bring that back to the African American community. It may benefit your family, and you may be able to employ some people from the community, things like that. That's good. But the cooperatives operate based upon a different principle, because the cooperatives are more beneficial to the community, and the people who are part of the cooperative are part owners of the cooperative as well. It's a different concept. It's coming from a different cultural paradigm. So this is why our history and culture is so important. The people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past and the present. People's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the present and future, and to meet the needs of the community. Okay, this is why our history and culture is so important. We've dealt with similar things before, not maybe exactly like today, but we've dealt with similar things before. How do we deal with that? Okay. So this is why our history and culture is so important. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. Okay, let's go back to this article here because we're running out of time. And then I want to get to these two. I want to get to these two stories. One dealing with Tyler Perry purchasing groceries for seniors, and also Master P providing services to clean seniors' homes in New Orleans. Okay, I want to get to those stories also. Let me try to silence this here. Okay, so let's go back to this article. Okay, so Yasmin Young, owner of Diaspora Salon in Baltimore, Maryland, is among the thousands of small business owners at risk of being shut out of the government effort known as the Paycheck Protection Program because of limits set by lenders grappling with overwhelming demand. These loans, which do not have to be repaid if the money is used for payroll, rent, or mortgage expenses, could be a lifeline for struggling businesses if they can get them. And for small business owners like Yasmin Young, who is African American, the hurdles could be much higher. That's because minority-owned businesses, especially African American-owned businesses, often have weaker banking relationships than their white-owned counterparts. One legacy of the practice of redlining or refusing to lend to people in communities of color. Research shows that African American and Latino business owners are denied loans at higher rates, anticipating that minority business owners could struggle to tap federal aid. Some lawmakers are proposing ways to earmark additional funds specifically for minority-owned businesses. And on this past Wednesday, which was the 8th, Wednesday, April 8th, 2020, a group of prominent African-American investors, including John W. Rogers Jr., the billionaire co-chief executive of Ariel Capital Investments, which is a mutual fund manager, sent a letter to lawmakers expressing concern that the emergency loan program was already leaving African-American borrowers behind. A 2016 study by economists at the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research found that only 1% of African-American business owners get a bank loan during their first year of business, compared with 7% of white owners. Let me repeat this. A 2016 study by economists at the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research found that only 1% of African-American business owners get a bank loan during their first year of business, compared with 7% of white business owners. Twice as many white business owners, 30% of the total, use business credit cards during their first year in business, compared with African-American owners, among whom only 15% rely on a credit card. Now, African-American businesses also start out with less capital, whether from investments or bank loans, than white businesses, the study found. Quote, Black-owned businesses continue to rely on family loans to a greater degree than white-owned firms in the 3 years following the firm's founding, end quote, the researchers found. They went on to say, this suggests that access to formal debt channels remains limited for minorities, end quote. Now, the institutions that frequently lend to minority-owned businesses, especially those in low-income neighborhoods, are nonprofit organizations called community development financial institutions, community development financial institutions. They rely on government funding and charitable donations to make loans, and grew out of earlier efforts to help African Americans build wealth in the wake of slavery and segregation. However, only 78 of 950 such organizations are participating in this government program, according to a Treasury spokesman. Okay, the $349 billion program from this $2.2 trillion stimulus bill to make loans to small businesses. Only 78 out of 950 community development financial institutions are participating in this government program, according to a Treasury spokesperson. The rest do not have authorization to participate because they have not previously been approved by the Small Business Administration, the SBA, to make loans backed by the agency. And you can go to SBA.gov, Small Business Administration's website, SBA.gov. They have information right on the homepage dealing with coronavirus and these loans that's part of this $349 billion set aside for small businesses. Now, this past Monday, the leaders of the Opportunity Finance Network, a group that represents the community development organizations, met with Treasury officials to suggest ways that the government could quickly approve the lenders for the program. Now, this is another example of how government is impacting business. Government and government regulations and policies create the environment that your business operates within. So when I hear people talk about we're not going to vote, we're just going to do economic empowerment and invest in the stock market, I'm like, do you understand that policies from government impact the stock market? This is why the stock market had one of its worst quarters in history. Do you understand that the policies coming from the White House impact businesses and Black-owned businesses right here in the state of Michigan? Once again, the statistics came out this past week that it's estimated that 1/3 of restaurants in the state of Michigan are not going to survive this coronavirus economic catastrophe. Well, they're largely talking about white businesses. If 1/3 of white restaurants are not going to survive, what do you think is going to happen to African-American-owned restaurants? Elections have consequences. So their representatives say they do not have clarity from the government on how to get that approval quickly enough to participate in the emergency program. This is the Community Development Financial Institutions. They're dealing with the Small Business Administration. So on Monday, this past Monday, the leaders of the Opportunity Finance Network, a group that represents the community development organizations, met with the Treasury officials to suggest ways that the government could quickly approve the lenders for the program. But later, in a statement posted on its website, the group said the Treasury officials were, quote unquote, non-committal about what, if any, actions they would take in response to the group's recommendations. A Treasury spokesman did not provide a timeline for when more community organizations might be approved to participate. In their letter, the group of Black investors, including Ariel Investments co-chief executive Melody Hobson, who you would hear on the Tom Joyner Morning Show every Monday, is African-American female. She's brilliant, expert in finance, expert investor. She also happens to be married to George Lucas, who created Star Wars. She's married to him. She's African-American, but she's married to George Lucas. You know, I guess if you're going to do wrong, at least do wrong right. At least you married a billionaire. What can I say? That's a whole nother show, but the hell. I mean, okay. She serves on the board of JP Morgan Chase, and she proposed that a quarter of the $250 billion in additional money for small businesses that Congress is considering adding to the program be set aside for Black businesses. Let me repeat this. Melody Hobson, who's married to George Lucas. George Lucas created Star Wars. He also financed the movie Red Tails. Okay. Melody Hobson, who's co-chief executive at Ariel Capital Management, she serves on the board at JP Morgan Chase. She proposed that a quarter of the $250 billion in additional money for small businesses that Congress is considering adding to the program be set aside for African-American owned businesses. Quote, this roughly $68 billion will only begin to address the disparities within capitalism brought into relief by coronavirus, they wrote. They went on to say, quote, by prioritizing clients that already have existing lines of credit, Black businesses and nonprofits find themselves yet again excluded from life-saving relief, end quote. Now, some federal lawmakers have proposed that part of the second stimulus could be directed to local business development organizations that focus specifically on helping minority businesses so that they can hire lawyers and offer advice to minority-owned businesses about how to get help during the pandemic. The $2 trillion CARES Act, the Coronavirus Rescue Act, the $2.2 trillion CARES Act allotted $10 million for minority chambers, like chambers of commerce, Black business chambers of commerce. But some lawmakers say that is far from enough, which is true. Okay. During a call on Wednesday, a conference call on Wednesday with Vice President Mike Pence, members of the Congressional Black Caucus expressed concern that funds from the program were not reaching Black business owners, according to Representative Emanuel Cleaver, the second Democrat of Missouri, and a caucus member, Black caucus member, who was briefed on the call after it took place. Vice President Mike Pence said that the program had gotten off to a shaky start in general. That is being generous. A shaky start in general, I mean, that's being kind. It was a horrific start. The Trump administration is basically making this stuff up as they go along. This is one of the most inept. I told you before, this is like the Three Stooges and the Little Rascals running the government. This is one of the most inept governments that I've ever seen. Representative Emanuel Cleaver of Missouri, a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, said, quote, he did admit that he had some difficulty. He did admit that they had some difficulty. The fear now is that if we don't act quickly, by the time we get the help for minority businesses by way of having advisors through minority chambers, chambers of commerce, Black chambers of commerce, things like this, Hispanic chambers of commerce, the fear is the money will be exhausted, end quote. Yeah, because white businesses are getting this money. This is why I said before, while African Americans putting out videos talking about baby daddies don't get $1,200 stimulus check and it's a one-time check, you're gonna have white businesses getting this money, this $350 billion. I said we need to focus on that, because we can say some of these businesses, when they come back up, they can hire some of these brothers that are behind on child support. But these businesses go under and white people run away with this money. I said, this doesn't make any sense. There's going to be another bill after this. The bill after this is there's going to be a huge bill after this, as I said before, because we just saw this past week, 6.6 million people filed for unemployment. Okay. If you go watch the broadcast I did April 9th, I think that was Thursday morning, April 9th, when the numbers came out, and I went through and broke this stuff down. Okay. And we look at the article from NBCnews.com. Unemployment claims surged by 6.6 million as coronavirus continues to rout U.S. workforce. This is from April 9th, 2020, NBCnews.com. It's a total of about 17 million people who have filed for unemployment this past week. In the past 4 weeks, about 17 million have filed for unemployment in the past 4 weeks. The previous week, it was 6.6 million. They had to upgrade that to 6.9 million who filed for unemployment. Another wave of 6.6 million American workers filed first-time unemployment claims for the week that ended April 4th, 2020, bringing the cumulative total to an astonishing 16 million over the past 3 weeks. It's about 16.8 million. BlackAmericaWeb.com had a good article they picked up from the Associated Press that dealt with this. For the week that ended March 21st, 3.3 million people filed new unemployment claims, easily shattering the record of 695,000 set in 1982. The record for the most number of unemployment claims filed in 1 week was set in 1982 at 695,000. Well, the weekend of March 21st, you had 3.3 million under the unstable genius who's supposed to be the big businessman, supposed to make America great again, talking about the greatest economy in the history of America. This wasn't the greatest economy in the history of America. And you base economies based upon GDP. This wasn't the greatest economy in the history of America. But guess what? You're destroying the economy. And then the record of 3.3 million filing for unemployment, which was a record for 1 week, that was broken 2 weeks in a row. 6.6 million 2 weeks in a row, but the first 6.6 million was upgraded to 6.9 million. So when you look at there's a big article from the Washington Post. I talked about this in my Thursday broadcast. You have experts saying that we're basically in a depression. They're predicting unemployment rates of about 15% very quickly, 15%. You went from about 3.5, 3.6%, 17 million people unemployed, and it's even more people than that unemployed, but the websites keep crashing, like Michigan.gov keeps crashing, so they can't file unemployment claims. These are just the people who actually file. It's millions more who are unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose? The correct answer, Alex, would be everything. Last week, the astounding figure doubled as 6.6 million people filed claims for the week that ended March 28, 2020, a figure that was revised upward to 6.9 million in the new release. Thursday's figure, Thursday, April 9th, was at the high end of analyst estimates of 4.5 million to 7 million. Analysts said they estimated 4.5 million to 7 million will file unemployment. It was 6.6 million who filed. Those are the ones who can actually get through and get and actually file after the website kept crashing. Those are the ones who actually get through the telephone lines and file. Read the rest of this article. I don't have time to get through this. Okay, so we have that. Check out the one from New York Times. There's more to that because this is a 7-page article from New York Times. Black-owned businesses could face hurdles in federal aid programs. We saw Earl Graves passed away on Monday, April 6, 2020. Earl Graves was the founder of Black Enterprise, phenomenal magazine, Black Enterprise. I've read it for years. I'm on blackenterprise.com basically every day. Black Enterprise founder and publisher Earl Graves Sr., the quintessential entrepreneur who created a vehicle of information and advocacy that has inspired 4 generations, FOUR, 4 generations of African Americans to build wealth through entrepreneurship, career advancement, and money management, has passed away. According to his son, Black Enterprise CEO Earl Butch Graves Jr., he passed away quietly at 9:22 p.m. on April 6th after a long battle with Alzheimer's. Earl Graves was 85 years old. Now, Earl Graves was the author of the book, How to Succeed in Business Without Being White. I read that book years ago. It came out in the 90s. Excellent book. And it's an award-winning classic business bestseller, How to Succeed in Business Without Being White. Earl Graves stated his life-defining purpose for founding Black Enterprise is simple, in simple, direct terms. Quote, the time was ripe for a magazine devoted to economic development in the African-American community. The publication was committed to the task of educating, inspiring, and uplifting its readers. My goal was to show them how to thrive professionally, economically, and as proactive, empowered citizens, end quote. Driven by that mission, Earl Graves became a trailblazing entrepreneur in his own right, building Black Enterprise from a single magazine publishing company 50 years ago to a diversified multimedia business, spreading the message of financial empowerment to more than 6 million African Americans through print, digital, broadcast, and live event platforms. As such, Black Enterprise was one of 2 companies that would appear on the Black Enterprise 100s, the BE 100s, the publication's annual ranking of the nation's largest Black-owned businesses each year of its 47 years. At one point, Earl Graves would operate 2 companies on the list, including Pepsi Cola of Washington, D.C., one of the nation's largest soft drink distributors owned by African Americans. Check out the rest of this article. They have a really good article written by Derek T. Dingle from April 7, 2020 at blackenterprise.com. Earl Graves Sr., founder of Black Enterprise, passes away at 85. So that's a big loss right there, but Black Enterprise lives on. That's why African-American owned businesses have to have a succession plan. Huffington Post has a really good article about Tyler Perry. Atlanta Angel Tyler Perry paid for seniors groceries at more than 70 stores. Let me know how much time we have left, JT. The actor, writer, and director purchased goods for elderly shoppers at 44 Kroger stores in Atlanta and 29 Winn-Dixie stores in Louisiana. 44 Kroger stores in Atlanta and 29 Winn-Dixie stores in Louisiana. Okay, let me know how much time we have, JT. Tyler Perry just made the lives of a lot of people in Georgia and Louisiana easier during the coronavirus pandemic. The 50-year-old movie mogul purchased the groceries for certain shoppers at 44 Kroger stores in Atlanta and 29 Winn-Dixie stores in Louisiana. Tyler Perry's generosity covered the halls of elderly people shopping during the hour reserved for them amid the global crisis, the global pandemic coronavirus. Tyler Perry currently lives in Atlanta and grew up in New Orleans. The receipts for those whose groceries were paid for were reportedly signed Atlanta Angel. Atlanta Angel. Check out the rest of this article from HuffingtonPost.com. Atlanta Angel. Tyler Perry paid for his seniors' groceries at more than 70 stores. I mean, Tyler Perry has a really big heart. There's really a lot of good things that he does for everyday people. Then we see news1.com has an article about Master P. JT, are you there? News1.com has an article about Master P and the work Master P is doing in New Orleans. Master P offers free home cleanings for senior citizens in New Orleans during COVID-19 pandemic. They took care of us. Now it's our turn to take care of them. Okay. This is from news1.com, and waiting for that article to load up. Okay. So amid the COVID-19 pandemic, New Orleans has emerged as one of the hardest hit U.S. cities. Hip hop mogul and hip hop artist Master P is on a mission to ensure that the most vulnerable groups in his hometown have the support and resources needed to make it through the crisis. According to WBRZ, he is offering to cover the cost of cleaning services for the city's senior citizens. And that's a great thing that he's doing. Also, he's helping the elderly population in New Orleans through his sanitizing and cleaning company, Master Clean Life. Master Clean Life. The company sells an array of disinfecting and cleaning products designed to sanitize homes and businesses. In addition to offering free deep cleaning services, he's providing senior citizens with free hand sanitizers. He said, quote, "The more we make, the more we give." Okay. Percy Miller, Master P, said in a statement, "Through these uncertain times, we really wanted to help our elderly get through this. Many of the seniors are not able to get to the stores. They are running out of groceries and resources are low. We just want to do what we can do to help them. They took care of us. Now it's our turn to take care of them." Check out the rest of this article at news1.com. News1.com. Master P offers free home cleanings for senior citizens in New Orleans during COVID-19 pandemic. Okay. And that's from April 12th, 2020. All right. So we run out of time here. I have to get to this article. I'll do another broadcast dealing with this. This is from news.yahoo.com. News.yahoo.com. Smoking marijuana could make the lungs more susceptible to COVID-19, experts say, as cannabis sales spike. Let me know how much time we have, JT. A marijuana smoking habit could also make a person's symptoms of COVID-19 more severe. Some studies and anecdotal reports suggest marijuana can help people cope with anxiety, which is being felt deeply across the world as the coronavirus pandemic continues. But lung health experts warn that smoking marijuana regularly could increase a person's risk of contracting COVID-19 and also having more severe symptoms and complications from the disease, given evidence on tobacco and COVID-19 and what we already know about how heavy marijuana smoking can impact the lungs. Okay. Preliminary CDC data found that chronic lung diseases, including asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, and emphysema were common underlying conditions in hospital patients in the US. The CDC, let's see here. Smoking marijuana could also make a person's COVID-19 symptoms worse compared to a non-smoker, said Dr. Panagis Galistatos, a pulmonologist and national spokesperson for the American Lung Association. So check out this article also. We have to get out of here. Smoking marijuana could make the lungs more susceptible to COVID-19, experts say, as cannabis sales spikes. So remember, the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now, knowledge corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. Stay tuned for Pastor Mo. We'll talk to you next week. Peace. All right, guys, we got to get out of here. Let's see. We got Shalita, Journal of Jade News, on YouTube, W. Canty. Who else we have on YouTube? Susie. Got Wolf, Greg, Holly, Cosmically Made. Just a few of the people watching us on YouTube. Okay. So if you like this type of information, also you can donate to the African History Network. $, the AHN Show through Cash App, $, the AHN Show through Cash App. It helps us to keep doing the research, finance our Sunday night show, pay the bills, stay on the air. And then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. And we had the first hour, we had some problems broadcasting. So we'll rebroadcast this with the full 2-hour show. Okay. We'll get that uploaded for you all for the full 2-hour show. All right. Be sure to follow me here on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Turn on notifications so you know when we go live. And then also follow me on my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, on Facebook also. Okay. All right. Okay, guys, look here. We have to get out of here. Okay. Talk to y'all later. Peace.